Morning, everyone, to the 859 Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee meeting. Very pleased to have you all here. Also to welcome Councillor Fowler and Councillor O'Neill, who are not members of the committee, but it's great having you with us today. Thank you for coming. As we do at the start of this committee all the time, we acknowledge and pay respect to traditional owners, the Aboriginal people of these lands and waters, and we acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions as well as Torres Strait Islander and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. I don't have any apologies, so we're just going to push through that. Can I have someone to move the minutes? Actually, yeah, let's someone to move the minutes. Councillor Marshall, seconded Councillor Martin. All those in favour? That motion is carried. We have three starred items, 5.1, 6.1 and 6.2. Councillor Martin has indicated he'd like 6.4 unstarred. Is there any other items that people would like starred or unstarred? Cool. Can I get a mover for the starred items? Councillor Wilkinson, seconded Councillor Martin. So that's items 5.1, 6.1 and 6.2. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour? Those start items are resolved. Thanks to the officers who came prepared for those today. We're going to kick off with 6.3. Is there a presentation for this one?
Through the chair, no. But we have an officer here to talk to it if you would like.
Okay. So...
Or several officers.
I was going to say, people prepared. So this relates to the heritage assessment of the Pink Hotel. Did you want to make some just introductory remarks about it, and then we can move forward?
Yep, I'll hand over to Catherine. She can give you a brief synopsis of what the report's about.
Sounds great.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you through the chair. So this item is in response to the general business item that was raised at council back in July in response to the Pink Hotel and its potential listing on the Gold Coast Local Heritage Register. The item speaks to the fact that the officers are currently doing the work and that there is a future process planned to undertake in September, October around the statutory notification process under the Queensland Heritage Act around looking at if the item has support from the public, so public submissions around the criterion. So that will happen in the future. But basically the response is to provide an update around what we've found so far and then what the future steps are.
That's great. Did anyone have any questions about it? And if we do those questions, then I'll throw to Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Martin, you had a question? Councillor Castro, great of you to join us. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, it's just semantics, I think, but just looking at the conclusion, it had the Pink Hotel formerly known as Ocean View Motor Inn, but I just wondered if that's previously, yes. Okay, so...
there's a spelling error.
Yeah, thank you.
You're picking up a spelling error for a councilman. Thank you.
Did not mean to, just was keen to know the official title there. And then obviously this assessment, I suppose that my query is the time it takes for it to be assessed. What sort of hold or, how can we ensure that this remains while we have this assessed?
So maybe through you to Catherine, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about the timeline for the heritage assessment, and then once that happens, what happens next?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the process is that the city officers have undertaken through consultants to reports. That information has then been used to make our own determination of whether it meets the criterion to be added to the register. So that's the point that we're up to now in terms of the statutory process that will commence under the Queensland Heritage Act in September, October. There's a notification period that's approximately, sorry, I don't have that on hand, but it's in page 33 of the agenda that talks through the process and the business days associated with it. Council has 60 business days post that statutory notification to make its own decision. So we are looking to then report back that work to Council before the end of the year. So basically we want to have a decision whether and bring that to the committee for consideration of whether it's to be added to the Heritage Register or not by the end of the year.
So I think the answer is we're entering into a season now where a preliminary assessment's been made. We're going to go to the market, go to the community and say, hey, and they're going to have a chance to
have their say on
have
it.
their say, and then that's going to come back to council and for us to make a decision within, I think it says on page 33, 80 days. Yeah, 80 business. This decision must be made 80 business days after the public notice is published.
Correct.
And then within 10 business days of making a decision, we've got to notify the owner and go through that process. Does that answer your question satisfactorily? Awesome. I'm going to throw to Councillor Doran, and then I'll go to Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. So, I guess the question I've got is, what makes this particular property worthy of being looked at under this heritage assessment? Like, what's so unique about it?
So the criterion that we work towards are listed on page 32 of the agenda item.
They are in grey.
And then on the grey, it speaks to the items that we believe has merit or potentially has merit. In terms of how we assess buildings, it's the responsibility of officers to basically look at local heritage in accordance with the Queensland Heritage Act and try to protect areas of significance. It is still a decision of council in terms of which buildings actually get added to the list. So basically the statutory process allows anyone to provide commentary around its heritage merit, but council in its decision making gets the opportunity to take other considerations into fact. So in terms of significance, we try to look to protect a range of different architectural and heritage buildings across the city. The Pink Hotel is probably, I can't speak to its specifics, but we can provide some more details. It has merit in terms of its original heritage character, but also from an architectural merit in terms of that's the typology that's quite significant, and it's being, to some extent, it has been changed from the city.
Just to follow on from that, Chair, so the process here is we've got to this point and we're going to the next point independent of the owner or the owners of the property. And that is not a requirement, as I understand. Is that right?
We will, as part of the statutory process, we have to provide notification to the property owner that
After this?
Yes, so when we start the statutory process, we will provide a letter to the property owner saying that we intend to look at adding this building to the Heritage Register. They are then able to make a submission based on what they would like to submit on to council.
I didn't see in the report any information about the age of the property or any commentary, aside from an assessment's been made that we'll go and look at it, any commentary around why? I guess, is that something that can be provided to councillors, because we're quite a young city, so heritage to me is quite an interesting assessment, given we are quite a young city, and I'm really interested in the nuance of why this one is being assessed.
Through the chair,
Page 36 has confidential, clear statements about why.
Yeah, it's quite broad though.
And you were looking for more specific elements.
Well, when I read those, Chair, I mean, they could apply to some properties in Robina, some of them.
yeah,
You'd be welcome to submit them for heritage assessment if you'd
This is
like.
why I'm sort of trying to understand why this one.
Okay.
Can I just have it?
Of course you can.
Yeah.
Councillor O'Neill, I'm going to...
Just to answer Councillor Doran's question, when I actually put that GB item forward, I did give some of that information that it was built around about 1962-63, and the architect also had... there were several other buildings in Coolangatta done by the same architect. They really haven't changed the structure of the building from when it was a motel. So going back to 62, 63. It was probably built in 62, opened in 63 as a motel.
Okay. So I'm going to take Councillor Doran's question and ask one that's related. The information that's on confidential pages on page 36, obviously we can't go into detail. Is there a more detailed report that could be provided to councillors about that summary that's on page 36?
through the chair, yes, we can provide a more detailed report.
Are you happy to review that before?
That's what I asked for.
Yeah, it's great. Awesome.
Also through the chair, we have a process on our webpage where individual people can actually go and click on the heritage component of the city's webpage, and any people can make submissions for assessment of heritage if they believe a place is of any sort of heritage. It could be a cultural heritage, it could be a rock, it could be a grave, it could be a tree. They submit an application into the city.
Many in Rabina, Kathy.
Yeah, many in Rabina. They submit an application in the city, and it goes to our heritage team to go through and do an initial pass assessment, and then depending on that, a bit much deeper assessment can be undertaken as well. It's a similar sort of process with the Queensland Register as well, except the state does the assessment and can come back and tell us it's not worthy of a Queensland heritage listing, but it may be worthy of a local heritage listing.
So just to confirm, the confidential matters on page 36, there'll be some sort of confidential memo provided to councillors as soon as possible, just for us to review. Is that right?
Through the chair, correct.
I have one last
Councillor
question,
please.
Okay. If this is progressed and it goes through and it does go through the next stage and gets endorsed thereby from council, what is the impact on the owner's ability to do anything with that? What is the material impact that assessing it under or making it a heritage assessment would do under the Queensland Heritage Act to the property? And I'm looking to understand what imposition or restrictions will be placed on people who have made investment decisions in that block.
Through the chair, it does depend on what elements are determined to be of heritage significance. So using as an example the Deluxe Theatre in terms of where it started as a listing the whole building to then being brought back to only the facade, through the criterion process, it will establish what elements are of significance and what needs to be protected. We can provide that further information in the confidential memo as well, if you would like, around what we believe that may look like.
So when you're referring to the Deluxe Theatre, you're talking about the property in Burleigh, right near the light rail station that's been built?
Yep.
You're good? Councillor Martin, question.
Thanks, Chair. And I commend Councillor O'Neill for bringing this GBI item up. I'm just interested, has this site been on the city's radar? I mean, has it been flagged for assessment, or has this been looked at before, or is it purely out of this GBI that it's been popped onto the radar?
Through the chair, my understanding is that the Pink Hotel, in terms of looking at it as an opportunity, has been on the list since about 2023. So the city has been progressively doing work to now get to this position of being able to undertake the statutory process.
Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Councillor Doran asked the majority of my questions. I just wanted to get clarity just a little bit further, if that's okay. So if the Pink Hotel is listed on the local heritage register, I understand we don't quite know what the redevelopment pathways might look like because it might be a facade retention or various. But how would that then be assessed under the city plan? And is there a current DA that's been approved by the city on the side? And how would this impact that DA if there is one? Through the chair, in terms of the process, it's almost like a joint process. So the listing on the local heritage register provides it some protection against demolition and modification of the building, but the planning scheme, so through the heritage overlay and city plan, provides its further protection around the modification of the building and other elements. So it is that two-phased approach. So listing it on the local heritage register, we would still have to do an amendment in the future to city plan or bring it through the new planning scheme to really fulfil the full protection element that the heritage overlay is looking to do. In terms of DAs, I am not aware that there's any current DAs that are sitting with the city. I can't speak to sort of building certification applications and all that because that's undertaken by a private certifier.
You good? So Councillor O'Neill done a bit of work with officers prior to the meeting and has prepared a change recommendation, which I'll let her explain, but I committed to move it on her behalf. And I don't know if she's lined up someone to second it, but thank you, Councillor Martin. So I'm going to move the change recommendation, and Councillor Martin's going to second that. I'm going to cede my opening remarks to Councillor O'Neill to introduce why and what it involves.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Catherine and Kathy and the rest of the Heritage team for your help on this. I brought the general business item in July to seek clarification where we were with the assessment process, but it's really gratifying to see on page 32 that there's been 2 assessments finalised through an external heritage consultant as well. So it's just not our team that has actually decided that this is worth actually going through a statutory process to put it on our local register. It has that added assessment, so that's really good. I think it's important to remember that local heritage listing doesn't mean that changes aren't allowed, and we've seen that with the Deluxe Theatre and certainly with other buildings. Built in 1962, it's probably the last structure in the Coolangatta area that you would view as the old style motels. And some of the criteria I know to meet the heritage listing talks about culture, talks about nostalgia, and certainly we'll probably know a lot more through a statutory process when we get submissions. And I would be surprised if there's not several submissions. It's held, if you look at any of the nostalgia pages, social media pages, it always features, and they talk about the Ocean View Motel rather than the Pink Hotel, even though it's called the Pink Hotel now. I think it's worthy of going through the statutory process. And the addition to the recommendation that Councillor Toes has kindly said he will move for me, just make sure that we need to do what we can in regards to making sure we get through that process undeterred. And I'm all for, I think the owner should be notified. I'm sort of surprised that they haven't been notified before this. I don't know the owners. Apparently they're from Sydney. I do know the person who has the lease over the property and has been running a business there for quite a while. He's certainly done some media on the Pink Hotel, and he feels as well that it should be heritage listed. But that's a process that needs to happen. I'm sorry that it hasn't, I feel really sad that it hasn't come before the council before this, but I know that we have a small heritage team, and there's probably lots, and I know there's lots of sites on their list. So I think just from all that, from the report, from the assessments, I think we need to start the statutory process, but I really think that we need to do that step number 3 to make sure that, just to speak to the State Development Infrastructure and Planning, and just to see what we can to, what's the pathway forward for them and what we can do while we're going through that process to just put that site on hold. And Coolangatta has got quite a few heritage listed buildings. It's got a great, rich heritage.
Great.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's got a great, rich heritage. We've got lots of heritage listed buildings already in the area. And I think that, as I said, through the submissions, you'll find that this is probably one that residents hold dear. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Now, do you know someone want to speak against? Of course you can.
So, a question through you, Chair. Number 3 seeks to assume an outcome from 1 and 2 from my read of it. It gets ahead of the assessment, is my read, and I'm trying to understand if that's just my read or whether or not that's everyone else's read, and then why are we talking to the department about, assuming based on the information given, a TLPI of some sort when we haven't made the decision or the process hasn't been completed yet?
So, as the mover of the motion, I think this is what I would describe as a temporary intervention that might circumvent an owner seeking to make redundant any heritage processes we might undertake before any heritage processes have run their course. That's my understanding as the mover of the motion. But maybe the officers could just talk about, from their perspective, why they provided the information to Councillor O'Neill and why it's relevant.
Through the chair. So we recognise that the local heritage register provides some protection, but then the planning scheme provides other protection because of the time it takes to potentially amend planning schemes or even discuss other planning instruments. We want to be in the position to be having those conversations with the state officers now, so that once we come to council, and depending on council's decision, we've got a really clear pathway forward about what the next action is.
Councillor Doran, does that answer your question? Okay, I've got Councillor Castro and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I had the same question really. 1 and 2, I don't have any problem with at all. But number 3, I mean, how long could this actually take to assess?
So, based on the answers of the questions we had before, we've got a process that's somewhere between 90 days plus 80 days plus 10 days, thereabouts, based on the report. That's the 1, 2. The 3 is effectively an immediate or a much speedier temporary intervention to protect it while the process is running its course. That's my understanding, but maybe Catherine could clarify.
That's close enough, yeah?
Sorry, Councillor Castler.
No, sorry, that's close enough, yeah?
Yeah, close enough.
Okay, all right. So have we had this happen before? Has there been any sort of precedent where we've put on hold while we're investigating a heritage property? But I'm just wondering the legalities around it and whether we can actually do that, because I've never seen that before. So I found it a bit of an odd one.
So best example I can say is the Gurungumbar floodplain had a temporary local planning instrument we did over multiple times before we made changes to the city plan. This is not a heritage. No. This is a much more simple, smaller exercise, but the mechanisms can be used for that purpose, to protect something while a bigger legislative process is running its course.
But a TLPI, generally we did that because there were things like, flooding concerns and those type of things. So as far as us assessing whether something's going to be heritage listed or not, has this ever happened before? Is there anything we can point to where we've put on hold, where we've gone to the state and we've actually said, look, can you make sure that nothing happens here in case someone wants to sell it or develop it? Have we ever done that from a heritage?
So I'll get that question answered. So I don't want to have the assumption made by any member of this council or members of this committee or the public that a TLPI is the mechanism, and that's why we've used potential planning pathways rather than definitively a TLPI. That might not be the right process to use. The question was, is there any precedent for us to use a temporary instrument of some sort before we take a further planning step?
So through the chair, yes, the Burleigh
the Deluxe Theatre?
The Deluxe Theatre is one of those things. The discussions that we're having with the state development officers doesn't mean that the minute we start the discussion there's protection in place. No. This is us having a conversation with them about which is the best pathway to, if 2 happens to be a result, what's the best and quickest pathway to have protection or conservation of that site. It's still a long process. Don't get me wrong. It's not like a 2-minute tick and flick and it's there. It's similar to a TLPI. There is preparations of documents. There's state assessments
and planning processes
that go with it. It's just, if, for example, a TLPI is quicker than a planning scheme amendment, which takes, as you're well aware, a number of years.
Yeah.
So it's not, there's a hold immediately on anything being done on this site. Yeah. It's us basically doing the work to ensure that if it comes back and we come back to council and council accepts that it goes on the register, we can then submit a document to the state if the state's accepting of that, and then that time frame clock starts. So it's still not a given until you get the approval at the end from the state.
Yeah.
So that could be another 3 months. It could be another 5 months after our 80, 90, 100 days out on the statutory process.
So there's a 6 to 12 month process to do the necessary public notification and analysis of that and bring a report back. 6 months of consultation and then whatever it takes. Might be less than 12 months, but somewhere between 6 months. And then there's another process once that happens to actually put it on the Queensland Heritage Register, and that might be another 12 to 18 months, whatever it is, to go through those stat planning processes. But the third part, the third clause in the motion is effectively trying to seek a consultation with the Department of State Development to talk about, is there any other planning pathway that they can give us some temporary protection in the interim? That's the intent of it.
Sorry, but again, in the interim, so from what Kathy said to what you're saying, that unless I misunderstood it, when you say in the interim, I'm talking about if it takes 90 days plus 80 days plus 10 days, if it takes 6 months.
That's just the consultation process, but go on.
Yeah, then this is to protect it in that time, because that's the interim. But what Kathy said is it's more getting ahead of the game. So if this is assessed as, yes, we need to heritage list that we've got something in place. But that is open to interpretation, that it's basically saying, well, if the owner of the site was planning to do something with it, and how do we know? Because he hasn't even, or he or she hasn't even been consulted at this point in time. They're not even aware of it. So if they were looking at doing something, is the interim this next 6 months while we're assessing it? Because that to me doesn't sound right, like we could do that. But so
I don't know. I think none of us know whether we can or can't do it, but that 3 encourages officers to explore whether any protections can be placed in process to, I think what we're trying to do is, the heritage significance of this site might be self-evident. People who live in Coolangatta since 1960 might already know that this is an important site. So when the person bought it, had they done their due diligence, they would know that it's a hard 1960s building, it's got some community significance, they might already know that. One thing that might be available to them is they might want to knock it down and build something different. And what we're trying to do is, because the community interest established by Councillor O'Neill is to protect this building, we're trying to make sure we do protect it and let those processes run their course without a opportunistic builder deciding that the community interest isn't being served and just knocking it down and being done before this process runs its course.
Yeah, I think 1 and 2 is great. 3 I just have a bit of a problem with, because I find it a bit odd, and I find it a bit odd that the owner doesn't even know anything about it. And I don't have a problem with 3 as long as we know that's okay, because the wording is open to interpretation, and it just concerns me at the moment that what we're doing is legal, or maybe we change that wording to satisfy me that I just find the wording a bit clumsy the way it is.
Well, there's nothing definitive about it. It asks officers
But that's the problem. That's the problem. There's nothing definitive about it.
Specifically city officers to investigate potential planning pathways. And its effectively intent is to protect the building from potentially being demolished or removed or some other action being taken before we go through this heritage process, because Councillor O'Neill has established that the community love this building and deeply want to protect it. And so we need to go through a process to work out whether that is valid or not.
Okay, I need to weigh up which one I'm going to go on it, because I can support 1 and 2. I'm still not sure about 3. But okay, let me have a think. While everyone's talking, I'll have a think.
We've kind of gone through questions, but and you're welcome to ask as many questions as you like. I don't want there to be any. But if someone does want to speak against it, I obviously want to give an opportunity for that as well. Councillor Martin, you raised your hand. Was that to speak against, or was that to ask a question? Of course.
A few moments ago, you said you don't want any committee member to think that we're exploring a TLPI because I flagged it.
No, I said that's specifically not what is in 3.
And because I raised it, you then decided to contend that and say that you don't want the public to think that. It's literally on a piece of paper given to us by the General Manager that it's possible. So
that it might be possible.
So I just want to clarify where that came from, because you inferred that I sort of was bringing that from nowhere.
Again, wasn't trying to be confrontational with you, Councillor Doran. What I was trying to say that whilst the TLPO might be one option, it's not the only option that is being investigated, and it's necessarily outlined in 3 that it's not the only option. Otherwise, it would be explicit in that note.
Piece of paper given to us.
I don't want people to think about it as the only exclusive path forward. Councillor Wilkins, do you have a question?
Thanks, Chair, and I thank Kathy for, I think, giving a bit further detail. My questioning was really around how quick can this protection come in, and it sounds like it's a little bit open-ended as far as when it could potentially be looking to come in post the 80, 90 days. So I don't know if it, as an interim measure, is going to achieve necessarily what it's setting out. I don't know, but I also appreciate this is simply trying to say that we're going to consult and investigate. It doesn't lock it in definitively as any kind of thing. My question is, whilst we're undertaking the assessment for it to be placed on the Gold Coast Local Heritage Register, knowing that we haven't made a decision that would come back to us anyway, is there any kind of works, if we're talking to the state, that could simultaneously be occurring outside of us that would see other layers come into this that are uncontrollable from our side of things, as far as if we then said, well, we're not going to do it, but we're talking with the state government, and then all of a sudden they have a level of interest in doing so, can they then simultaneously trump us on a decision that we may make whether we proceed or not proceed?
Through the chair, the only way that would occur is if it was on the Queensland Heritage Register, and it does not meet those requirements at all. So there is no way they can come in and trump us. It would have to go through the same application process that we've just had to get onto the Queensland Register, which then also requires consultation, which also requires an assessment. So it's a long way down the track before it even gets to that extent. And then we would still have to put it into our planning scheme, even if it's on the Queensland Register, to have that afforded that protection. So the recommendation that we've got is like, we want to actually do the consultation. Whilst we're doing the consultation with the community, we're exploring options of how we can, once we come back to the city with the results of that consultation, councillors, here are the options if the results come back that we want to protect the heritage listing. Here are the options that we have that will be quicker than a planning scheme option, because the planning scheme takes so long.
Okay. Councillor Wilkins, please.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate that insight. I guess then further to that is that if we as a council then determine, say, not to proceed, to try and put it on the register just for sake of hypotheticals, what are the repercussions that could potentially be coming forward if we're talking to the state government and they're investigating potential planning pathways over the site? If they come in at a later date, could be a month, could be 2 months, perhaps after this happens, is there, or does our decision then trigger them to just stop, kaput? Like, what's the flow-on effect after that time with the state government? Because if they come in, we say no, for instance, just hypothetical. What is the planning pathway? What could occur if they then come in and say, well, we actually want to do this now, and it then potentially trumps the decision of council? I'm just trying to get a bit of a lay of the land.
Through the chair, if the city decides, if the council decides that it's not to be listed on the heritage register, the pathway stops. And if the city decides that it doesn't meet the local heritage register, no one is going to actually try and put it on the Queensland heritage register, because it's got a higher assessment criteria and benchmark to get onto the Queensland register.
Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, if this was resolved today in point 3, I know we're talking about this specific situation, but whether this would sort of outline similar processes in the future, whether this might, I guess, sort of confirm a process with the state going forward, because I mean, personally, in Division 13, we obviously had Deluxe Theatre, and from my perspective, I think if there's a fair initial assessment that something could be heritage listed, I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense that there is a hold, because there's a lot of competing interests. So while that's fully being assessed, that it should have a temporary hold until the final assessment is done. So I'm just interested, could this so if we get similar situations like this in the future, would this sort of map out a
precedent for how we do this? Good question. And this is the process that we might have explored for Deluxe anyway, isn't it?
Through the chair, yes. So the Deluxe Theatre Council actually resolved at the time to enact the need for a TLPI. So they went to the minister asking for a TLPI, but they also started the process to investigate it being added to the local heritage register and the state heritage register at the same time. So council has presently recently done this sort of work. In terms of the process, because there is a disconnect between the local heritage register and getting it into the planning scheme, we want to know what the most efficient way to be doing that is. Like a TLPI, not to say that that's the way forward, provides some protection, but it's only interim, whereas the planning scheme amendment, it's in there. Once it's in there, it's in there. So we just want to discuss with state officers what's the best way forward in terms of getting the ultimate provisions into the planning scheme. So change recommendation 3 allows us to explore those discussions.
Can I just follow up on that? So when we did the Deluxe Theatre one, was it already on the Queensland, the local heritage register?
No.
So
No,
it's a
we
very similar
investigated.
situation, and that process is basically what's informed the advice you're providing to councillors today. Yeah, okay, great. Awesome. Any other questions, or does someone want to speak against? Oh, Councillor Marshall.
This might be a silly question, but are there, I guess, examples, sorry, through you, Chair, are there examples where, I guess, a protection like this hasn't been implemented and we've lost the ability to do the heritage listing?
Through the Chair, I would suggest that there's a number of examples across the coast of where there was buildings that were of significance and were of heritage significance that have been lost because they aren't on the local heritage register, nor are they in the planning scheme. So without it being there, there's no opportunity for the city to provide any benchmarks around assessment about what should be retained or not retained. So.
Is there any higher profile examples of things that did the Pink Poodle go through a process and we didn't end up proceeding with it? Yes. Does that ring a bell to you? No, maybe not. Miami Ice, that's a great example. So we had the Miami Ice building, we started a process, but it ultimately failed the tests and the Miami Ice building got removed. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, so that was probably where I was leading about the Miami Ice one. So we had done, I guess my question through you, Chair, was had we done, I guess, part 1 and 2, and would that have been different if we'd enacted point 3 for Miami Ice?
I think it failed the test in the end, so it wouldn't have, but we would have protected it while
you did the assessment.
Which I think, how far down the assessment did we do with Miami Ice?
I'd have to, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'd have to clarify that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Councillor O'Neill, then Councillor Wilkinson.
Just one question that you might be able to clear up for the other councillors, Catherine, just through the Chair. Until the assessment process, the initial assessment, and we've done some external assessments as well, until that process is finished, the general process is then to go to the owners of the building. That you can't do that until you assess whether it's actually got merit or not. Is that correct?
Correct, through the Chair, that we have to have evidence to go to the owner about what we're looking to protect for them to be able to then make a properly and informed submission.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Councillor Wilkinson was next.
Thanks, Chair. And it's not trying to deviate away from the current recommendation in front of us, but just touching on a point that this obviously came from a GBI initially. We've heard today some commentary around that this has been on the radar since 2023. I just would like to get a bit of an insight as to do we have an indicative list that we're obviously looking at across the city is probably the first question that I would ask. And then if we've got that list, I know we've only got a small team that works on this, so I appreciate that. But just in forward thinking, I don't know how many of these types of things could potentially pop up. But is there a way that we can try to, if there are identified sites that we're going to give consideration for, how do we do that a bit more swiftly, I guess, to not lose potentially some of these culturally significant sites that I know there's been a bit of discussion today on that we feel like we have at times. So how can we do that better, I guess? And I know that's a big question and you might have to...
Ideological question there, yeah. Probably, yeah. First thing is, yes, there's a list. Yeah. Yes, you can have a copy of it. I think we can get a copy to all councillors. Yeah, you can get a copy of that kind of momentarily, next couple of days, whatever, next 24, 48 hours. I'm assuming any councillor can raise a general business item about an item on that list that they chose to, and if that didn't occur, we would just systematically go through that list as resources were available. Am I...
Correct. Through the Chair, that is correct. So the city hasn't actually reviewed or amended the local heritage register. I think it's approximately 20 years apart from the Deluxe Theatre. So that's what the team has been doing. We've reviewed the current listings and the criteria associated to make sure that the new planning scheme is contemporary around its provisions. The remainder of the work there, we're looking at a program of how to roll this out consistently. So the statutory process that will commence in late September is actually kind of like a pilot. We haven't done this for so long. We want to make sure that we're going to be doing it in the most efficient way. So there are some buildings or sites that we will be taking forward. So we'll come to the councillors to talk about that through briefing notes. There is a list. It's probably a long list, but we are in a position of where we've come up with a program to progress that through.
So are you comfortable with providing the current list of potential heritage to all councillors without the necessity of putting it in the resolution? Is that just kind of operational? You can provide that as a reasonable request, I think. Is that all right? Great. Councillor Wilkinson. And then Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. And probably through to you. Given that it sounds like it's a sizable list, which I could imagine it would be, I just want to, if you're able to, maybe perhaps when you send that through to councillors, maybe give a bit of an outline time frame of how we're doing that, because the last thing I want to see is every single one of those listed sites then come before us as a GBI and we try to push ahead.
Were that to occur, there would be a subsequent and related special budget allocation for additional resources. If council took the view that all of these places were essential, there is not the resources. Oh, I suppose I can't speak, but my understanding is there's not the resources in the organisation to do all of them at once.
No, hence why I asked for a timeline of when.
Yeah, great. All right, so maybe that can be added to the list. Is that all right? Thanks, Anne. I had Councillor O'Neill.
Through you, Chair, just a bit more information too. I did receive a briefing back in 2023 from the heritage team about the sites in my area that were on the list, and I did encourage the Pink Hotel to be investigated. And there was quite a few on that list. One of the buildings has now been demolished on that list, but there was quite a few. But I got the briefing like through heritage. But members of the public can nominate. I think, is that correct? It can nominate for a building to be heritage listed as well,
and
it doesn't have to be the owner of the building.
Yeah, we've got trees in Division 9. There are trees.
We've got trees as well.
Correct. So anyone can nominate a space or a building, and it doesn't require a nomination for the city to investigate it for its inclusion in the local heritage register, because it's determined by the criteria that the city has set, which aligns with the Act.
Yeah. Did anyone want to speak against it? No? Well, with that being the case, Councillor O'Neill has identified a community need or community interest in protecting this building. She's raised a general business item. We've received this report, which is outlined on confidential attachment on page 36. The preliminary details we've resolved that councils have provided a more specific summary of the elements outlined on that confidential page, and then we'll go through this. We're proposing to go through this process of engaging with the property owner, having had some feedback from the community about this, the importance of this facility or this building. I want to commend Councillor O'Neill for actively seeking to protect something that's important to her community, and also going through that proper process of general business item and reporting, and to do that properly. If there's no further debate, that's the close, and I'll call for a vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Councillor Doran, did you want to have your vote recorded in the negative, or just abstain? Okay. Awesome. Thanks to the heritage team. Thanks, guys. Councillor Martin unstarred the NaturallyGC communication item, and so the team might come out, and maybe Renee, you might join us. Did you want reinforcements from the NaturallyGC team, or just going to fly solo? They're on standby. I know, that's the first time you've heard a chair make chicken noises to tease the officer. I'm sure I'll get an OIA complaint about that one. There we go. That's what I like to hear. Thank you. Thank you. Great to have you with us. You're some of our favourites. Renee, would you like to introduce the item? Have you got a presentation or?
No.
Okay, just.
So essentially, this is a report that we've was following a recommendation from this committee to have a look at communications channels and the communications approach for NaturallyGC. As you can see in the paper, we've had a workshop with the team and through that workshop identified the problem we're trying to solve, which is always a good place to start with a marketing challenge or a communications challenge. And through that we also realised some efficiencies as well as looking at the types of communication channels that would be most appropriate to ensure that NaturallyGC creates that ongoing and meaningful connection with the community.
So can we just clarify, you're here on behalf of MXC, which is Marketing External Communications?
Yep.
And you've been kind of engaged by the NaturallyGC to provide some advice about this?
Yes, correct. So, but we've taken a very collaborative approach to this and worked together on the paper as well as through the workshop. So definitely hand in glove, but someone has to author the paper, but I've definitely done it in collaboration with the wider team. And one of the challenges discussed in the workshop was the need to streamline content sharing with NaturallyGC participants and stakeholders, effectively to create a place where volunteers and partners can engage and connect with NaturallyGC. So that follows that the communication channel recommended for NaturallyGC was primarily a Facebook group under the City of Gold Coast Facebook page. The City of Gold Coast Facebook page has 273,000 followers, and the group would then automatically get verification by default as being a NaturallyGC group within the Facebook page for City. So why a group? In short, a Facebook group creates a sense of community, belonging, creates conversations and deeper and a greater depth of engagement. And that challenge that was articulated in that workshop was around engagement and content sharing at a really deeper and community level that was expressed by NaturallyGC. The other need states expressed was the ability to share content and to share and allow different types of content. So a Facebook group allows visibility, that community conversation. It's a two-way conversation. It's efficient. Some of the ways that the team was sharing content in the past weren't as efficient, and the resources that we've identified for this Facebook group, which would be primarily the NaturallyGC team with support from MXC, so Marketing and External Communication. The efficiencies created balance out what was happening before with the team and how they were sharing content. Sharing posts and events, creating polls, notifications and alerts, and peer support, but also visibility in the algorithm of Meta. These are all advantages of a Facebook group. It also allows a space where you can push and pull. And this is really important to create that engagement, which is exactly what NaturallyGC's marketing problem statement was, is how can they push out all the rich and awesome content that they have, but also pull and engage those conversations with the community, and also conversations at a deeper level with their volunteers and partners. And a Facebook group allows and facilitates that. As well as that, we're actually going to ensure that the group has visibility, and there's a variety of ways you can do that. And we also ensure that NaturallyGC's approach is embedded in a strategic marketing campaign. So whilst I'm primarily talking about a Facebook group, some website efficiencies that we've identified and pulling that through to the cities page and making it an easier customer experience, our primary focus is what does the community want to see, what can we deliver them, and what's the best channel for that, and what are the other things that we can do to achieve that. So what we're doing is making our city channels work harder, and what we can also do is via Instagram, the city's Instagram page, for example, we can create that brand awareness, the reach, the discovery, and the visual storytelling for NaturallyGC. And we're leveraging our 107,000 followers on Instagram to do that. So you can see that there's no need necessarily to create another new channel for NaturallyGC, because the richness that we can get through that Instagram page that the city already has, we're driving those existing channels much harder, if you like. The rest of the information is in the paper, which you all would have read, but it's also about encouraging those member-to-member interactions and fostering that deep connection with our community. It also allows primarily pulling content like events, the holiday program, announcements, weekend highlights, and celebrating the achievements and all of the great things that NaturallyGC offers for our community. So it's a space to easily and quickly share all of those great events that happen over the weekend with the community in real time, or as close to real time as possible, and it enables the team to be on the ground and sharing that as it comes through to them.
Great. Awesome. Councillor Martin, you asked to be unstarred. You get the first question.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. I'm not the social media expert, but I was really interested in around the group versus page, particularly, we interact with community groups, and I'm just interested in the moderation, because they can be wonderful, amazing places, but they take a lot of work, and I'm just wondering how we will moderate behaviour, language, fact-checking in this space.
You're back on. It's all good.
Absolutely. And it will be a moderated group. Part of our approach as an organisation is to test and learn. Creating that group allows for that, but by creating guidelines and rules for the page, if you like, community guidelines that everyone would have on their Facebook pages, that's one way to set the tone. We also find on our city's Facebook page and on our city's channels, there's a lot of self-moderation within the group. Primarily what we'll do with this group is have it open for partners and sharing of content, but there's still an administrative element to that, where the NaturallyGC team would allow that publishing of that content and primarily inviting it from partners. The community would then be encouraged to share their comments or photos. Say it's an event on the weekend, a tree planting, for example. Soraya and her team would post that content, and the community would be encouraged to reflect, comment on that event within that post itself, similar to how Redland City Council manage their group page for the same thing. So instead of the other part of your question, Councillor, page versus group, a page is more about awareness and pushing content out, although there is an engagement element. Within our conversations and workshops with NaturallyGC, there's definitely that need for deeper engagement, which a group can facilitate. It also allows within the channel for larger content pieces, so more photos in one. It is naturally that space to share more content, if you like, whereas those types of posts on a Facebook page tend not to do as well within the algorithm.
Yep. So Councillor Munn, you still have the floor, and then we're going to go Councillor Fowler and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thanks, Chair. Just interested to how councillors would interact with that group. I'm sure councillors, some don't allow pages, where we have pages, so I'm not sure whether that still needs to be fleshed out, but I'm sure we...
Is your question, can councillor pages engage with the Facebook group for NaturallyGC?
Yeah, or how it will change for... It's, we love to share what the NaturallyGC team is doing, and this is obviously a new dynamic, so just wondering how our councillor pages will interact with that group, or can.
Absolutely. Once the page is set up, it's probably easier to run you through how that would function when it's actually in real life, if you like. But as an example, councillors can still post, share like any other group. The group will be completely open to the public and act in that way. So you can share, post, tag, use that content in the same way that you would with a page.
Great.
Answer is yes.
Yes,
and that's
fantastic.
including
and happy to run through it. That's probably better.
Sure.
So it'll be a public group that allows pages to post.
Yeah,
but is moderated.
Great. And my last question was just our beaches. I know it's somewhat of a separate team to NaturallyGC, but I know when we have, let's say, planting, whether someone who's interested in planting in a reserve versus someone who's interested in planting in a dune, they're typically the same people.
Yeah.
So I just wonder,
Naturally
will
GC
that
includes
our
beach road.
beaches, not to take anything away from the coastal team?
No, it doesn't. Is
how do
Naturally
we
GC beaches or
include-
no? June care and that isn't in there. Gosh, okay. So what's your question? Sorry, I interrupted.
Well,
Shouldn't have
my
interrupted.
question
Sharing, sorry.
is there, I realise they're separate teams, but the type of person that attends and engages have an interest in both, especially those that are on coastal divisions. Is there an opportunity to integrate the Our Beaches plantings?
So absolutely, we can take a look at that in terms of how we manage our own channels. So as I said before, this is about driving our own channels harder, putting ourselves in the customer or the community's point of view and what's important to them. And then we match our channels and our communication and marketing to that need state. There probably are lots of synergies between Beaches dune planting and Naturally GC run dune planting, and we can explore that, how we promote that via the city's channels to ensure that there's that connection with the community. So it can absolutely look at how that content might feature within the Naturally GC group, because how we define our programs and projects and services isn't necessarily always how the community might define them, view them, or want to engage with them. So when we're putting our customer first, that's the lens we're placing across how we communicate with the community.
I think the answer is maybe, but probably yes. But we'll see. Actually, there might be another question here, answer here, Andrew.
Through the chair, Councillor. So we do already proactively share the Beaches program activities through Naturally GC channels that currently exist.
Cool.
And yes, they do sit within Infrastructure Gold Coast within the Beaches team, but we do collaborate with them really closely through Naturally GC.
That went from a maybe to a yes very quickly. Councillor Fowler was next, and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I'm just more interested, I guess, in the acquisition strategy of how we're going to grow the group. I mean, from my perspective, I thought it was quite a conservative approach with what we're taking, and I understand the reasons why from a branding perspective. Otherwise, we run the risk of Naturally GC looking like its own brand and it's not connected to City. So I understand why we'd be doing that. My concern is that if we don't have an acquisition strategy that's multi-channel outside of our current audience, we're just going to keep speaking to the same people time after time. And we can see that at our events when we attend. It really is the same attendees that do come. So how the strategy behind creating a group, how is that going to engage with new audiences that will then filter through to more people across the city knowing about this great work that we do and attending these events? And my second part to the question is this phase one? Is there a more, ambitious look at all social media channels, not just Facebook? Facebook's primarily an older demographic, essentially. Naturally GC are family events, and I get that we'll be sharing content on Instagram, but is this it? Or is this that the team will then look at this as stage one, and stage two might be to look at TikTok or Instagram, or there's a myriad of other channels out there, and this is such valuable content. So that's the two parts to my question.
Yeah, so the original acquisition strategy to drive and create the group will obviously, so how do people find Facebook groups? They find it through personal algorithms, recommendations in their feed, searching specific interest items, seeing groups in their feed that friends have joined, receiving an invitation from other members, and people explore groups in their local area. So that's some of the ways that people would discover the groups. But what we would do is also promote it through our channels. So we've got a myriad of channels that the city owns, including the Naturally GC EDM, the electronic direct mail, and the city's EDM. So there's definitely a strategy to promote the group itself. But there's a bigger piece that sits behind that that's under development, which is the strategic marketing plan for Naturally GC. Some of the things that came up out of the workshop were also what's the acquisition beyond talking to the converted, which is what you're talking about with people that will probably naturally gravitate to the group. So what's the long-term goal of Naturally GC marketing, acquisition, retention, or behaviour change? How can content marketing reach beyond the converted and engage new audiences? And how does Naturally GC align with our natural city strategy and other environment pieces like the beaches that we've just mentioned? We need to answer all of those questions to then develop the strategy, and we need to do that in collaboration with NaturallyGC, but more broadly other areas within EHR as well. So that work is underway, but it hasn't underpinned this group channel strategy that we've got in the paper. Obviously, we needed to ensure we had some quick wins, if you like, to start to ensure efficiencies in the way the team were operating and sharing their content.
Cool. Councillor Fowler, is that?
I don't know if I've answered your first question. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I guess you did answer it. I mean, when we're marketing to an e-news and we're marketing to our own channels, we're marketing to the same people. So that phase isn't really going to bring in the new audiences. I think it's going to have to be what happens on the algorithms outside of that. That's going to be the biggest push, but I get the approach. The second part of my question was more about in the strategy development, is it where are we moving to from here, or is this really the stop and start of what we see for social media for the NaturallyGC brand?
So we never take a set and forget approach to marketing. We're always reviewing what channels that we've got. We're also looking at all of the channels that we have and we own across the city to ensure that they're fit for purpose and doing the right thing. We've obviously got finite resources, but an increasing appetite for this type of content, and we're always balancing and reviewing that. So this isn't a set and forget by any means. This is the start of the Facebook group for NaturallyGC, but through that development of that strategic marketing plan, we'll resolve where those other tensions are, what that marketing challenge is, and as always with good marketing, you do the strategy work first and then the channels and the tactics come later.
Councillor Wilkinson, you all right? You great? Do I have a mover if there's no more questions? Councillor Martin is going to move the item. Councillor Wilkinson is going to second it. Councillor Martin, given that you unstarted, do you want to open debate?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for bringing this item back to committee. I know it was off the back of a change recommendation, but I think it's really exciting. We as councillors love to engage with NaturallyGC, and I know the community really do. But it's great to sort of give it its own space. And I think this, whilst I'm not a social media expert, I think happy to trial and see how it grows. I think this community group is really interesting, the two-way communication that you talked about. Some of the comments talked about other channels and other algorithms, and I think they're all valid. And
no TikTok yet, Councillor Martin. No TikTok yet.
No TikTok just yet, but I would agree around the Instagram and younger audiences, new audiences. So thank you for the presentation, and hopefully it gets up.
Great. Does anyone want to speak against the recommendation? No? All right, I'll take the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried.
Thanks,
guys. Next item on the agenda is the Creative Gold Arts and Culture Action Plan 25 to 27. Which I think is Melinda is presenting. And Fleur. She was hiding behind. Welcome, Fleur.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. My name's Fleur McManaman, Manager Arts and Culture for the City of Gold Coast. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present our Creative Gold Arts and Culture Action Plan 2025 to 2027. This plan is a continuation of the city's commitment to the development of the arts sector on the Gold Coast, and will act as a bridge between the 10-year Culture Strategy 2023 and the next era of ambition. The plan has been facilitated by the city's Arts and Cultural Development Service, who look after arts strategy setting, reporting, arts funding and partnerships, the provision of advisory services and skills development through programs and initiatives, the delivery of public art and arts innovation. To present a a visual representation of some of the more recent outcomes and activities enabled by the city's Arts and Cultural Development Service, we have a short video to play today. So in that video, we saw activities that were delivered within community and further afield, and not just within the Hodder Cultural Precinct or at major events, which is one of the things that sets the city's Arts and Cultural Development Service apart from the work of Hodder and EGC. So the video featured outcomes from the following city programs: the Arts Development Fund and the Creative Gold Arts Incubators, water walls and public art commissions as part of new major developments such as Greenheart, as well as sector development programs including Creative Spaces, Generate GC, First Nations Artist Camp and Level Up Visual Arts residencies for youth. Oh, I'm going to go back one. Let's go back one, thank you. So to provide some background and content to the report, the City of Gold Coast adopted the Culture Strategy 2023 in November 2013 with a clear vision for the development of the arts and culture sector on the Gold Coast over 10 years. So over these years, Council has invested heavily into the creative sector and cultural infrastructure. Through commitment to the city's vibrant lifestyle through arts and cultural activity, this action plan aims to continue the momentum as we work towards a whole-of-city vision for arts and culture in the lead-up to the Cultural Olympiad ahead of the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. So this work has been undertaken to align with the next phase of the city's integrated planning framework, which will inform when the Culture Strategy 2023 will be officially retired. And the report notes that an update on the city's broader strategic framework will be presented to Council in November 2025 this year. So comprehensive creative sector consultation was completed for the first time in over 10 years as part of this work, with over 900 survey responses and 160 workshop attendees from the creative sector. This plan will deliver on the Council Plan measure, Satisfaction with Arts and Culture, and the Gold Coast 2032 Legacy Strategy Outcome 4.3, which is Our Culture is Unique and Celebrated, It Belongs to All, as well as delivering on important links with the city's Reconciliation Action Plan journey. So, the three main catalysts for change that were achieved as part of the Culture Strategy 2023 were the Home of the Arts Cultural Precinct, so Hodder, the redevelopment, including the Hodder Gallery and the outdoor stage, which expanded the city's civic centre to establish a future-focused cultural precinct with connection to Service Paradise with the construction of the Green Bridge, the establishment of a dedicated arts and culture service or unit for the city, and the delivery of the Commonwealth Games 2018 Festival cultural program. The strategy has seen many other notable outcomes, and a few of these are outlined in the background section of the report, including the establishment of the city's annual flagship arts festival Bleach, establishing multi-year funding support for local arts organisations, ensuring that they can create, live and present here on the Gold Coast. And it should be noted that 6 of these organisations have now successfully leveraged the city's multi-year funding to receive Arts Queensland or State Multi-Year Organisations Fund 26 to 29, resulting in $2.7 million invested into the sustainability and long-term employment of creatives on the Gold Coast over 4 years. And this is an increase from 4 organisations last time around. So mentoring and professional placement programs have been established, resulting in long-term employment, as well as award-winning content being produced and presented further afield. A public art plan, a music action plan, and the establishment of a special entertainment precinct were also outcomes of the 10-year strategy and delivered or enabled by the Arts and Culture Unit. The collection of citywide data was also established, providing insight on the perception and value of arts and culture and its impacts on social connection and community wellbeing. Now, to give a little bit of insight on what arts and cultural activity means for our community, we have some recent data to share from the citywide Capturing Cultural Impact survey results conducted in May this year. And these results show that satisfaction with arts and culture is at 75.3%. This is an increase of 2.3% from 2023, the last time the survey was done, and is the highest that has been achieved since the Commonwealth Games 2018 festival, where we saw 74.3% prior to the sector being impacted and devastated by COVID. With over 1,000 responses from residents across the entire city, this gives us more than 99% confidence that this is reflective of the entire population. And what we see from these results are that 89% of our community agree that arts and cultural activity helps them to enjoy a greater quality of life. 79% agree it helps them feel a part of the community. 74% agree that it is an important factor in deciding where they live. And 75% agree it connects them to our shared history and culture. Now, these 4 first insights are all showing an increase from the previous survey in 2023, and only 59% agree that the city has arts and cultural experiences for all age groups, which is the same result as 2023. And it's interesting to see here that there was a decrease of 6% from 2023 in people who agree that they can access arts and cultural activity in their neighbourhood. Now, the creative sector consultation survey results from those 900 creative respondents noted that while the city is known for its major events, there is a growing demand for elevated local stories, broadening cultural offerings, and improving access to contemporary presentation spaces. And the provision of spaces for creating and presenting is a key action area of the Creative Gold Action Plan. Now, I've also included a slide here just to point out some of the different current roles and responsibilities within the Gold Coast arts landscape to help understand the complex ecosystem, who looks after what, and to highlight the importance of working towards a coordinated approach to a whole of city vision in the second year of this action plan, particularly in the lead up to the 2032 Games. So the foundational work that we do in the centre really connects to all of the other components surrounding it. And engagement, participation and sector growth is the connecting outcome that wraps around all of these separate parts. So in the centre, the city's Arts and Culture Unit looks after the arts sector development, whole of city strategy setting and reporting, arts innovation, arts funding and partnerships, public art, creative spaces for emerging and grassroots activity in districts across the length and breadth of the coast, not just in the city centre, youth arts, Indigenous arts and inclusive arts. And the unit also works closely with other units and departments within the city administration, also represented in the teal colour on the right. So we work with community grants for divisional fund allocations, not-for-profit arts organisation funding, multi-year agreements, within the Office of the CEO and Business Services. We work closely with Cultural Heritage, the Controlled Entities team, the Games Coordination team, community centres, events team, the Infrastructure Open Spaces team for the management of public art. And then in purple at the top and the bottom, we have our stakeholders. So these are our audiences, our broader community, and artists and creative businesses themselves. Then we have the controlled entities over here in the colours. We have EGC, who look after the city's $1.5 million arts fund, premier venues and major events and festivals, and the AAA rated gallery for the city and the city's visual arts collection. Invest GC, looking after film and music action plan legacy outcomes and major developments like the Miami Creative Industries Precinct and the indoor entertainment arena. We work with other levels of government, state, Arts Queensland, federal, Creative Australia, as we start to see investment in ecotourism and the 2032 Games and what that means for local stories being showcased through arts experiences and public art moving forward. So you can see it's a complex environment with many players all needing to stay across who's doing what in which space for the growth of the city's creative industries. So the city in the centre enables strategy for art forms to move into other areas where they can become revenue generating, talent development and content, because you can't sell product if you don't have the stock, community engagement and participation within arts and culture. So the future direction consultation itself, detailed in section 5.2 of the report, outlined a future aspiration for arts and culture on the Gold Coast. That being that the Gold Coast is a magnet for those wishing to experience and create the power of beauty of arts and culture. 6 focus areas that provide an overarching framework for future whole-of-city strategic plans, and these include First Nations stories, an inclusive sector, inspired people and places, connected creatives, creative careers and sector support. And these focus areas are very much in alignment with state and federal cultural priorities and have been informed by our creative community and will inform a new coordinated approach once the Culture Strategy 2023 is retired. So key actions were also recommended to continue the momentum over this interim 2-year transition period while we work towards this new coordinated city vision, and have been incorporated into the plan in alignment with those 6 strategic focus areas shown in the previous slide. This table is a summary of the action areas included in the plan that were informed by that sector consultation recommendation, and each of these have a set of further actions and outcomes that we want to see ahead of 2028. Ensuring meaningful First Nations engagement continues was important to the sector, continuing the momentum through support, funding programs and initiatives in public art, education and professional development that has positioned us so well in the last 10 years to produce that quality local content and grow the creative sector. Spaces for creating and presenting will ensure people have greater access to arts and cultural activity in their neighbourhood and not just in the centre of the city. Strengthening connections and leadership capabilities were also important to the sector. And finally, that coordination and communication to facilitate the all-important whole-of-city vision for arts and culture to commence in 2028. Now, whether that be a standalone strategy or an implementation plan as part of a broader city strategy will depend on that integrated planning framework. So this plan will be implemented by adapting or enhancing existing recurrent arts and culture programs and initiatives, and by developing new initiatives within existing operational funding for the next 2 financial years. To deliver these actions across city departments, our plan includes measures for success, as outlined in this slide, an increase in satisfaction with arts and culture rating, which is recorded citywide every 2 years, an increased satisfaction rating with council-delivered programs and initiatives through participant surveys, satisfaction with arts experiences delivered by council-supported organisations, because we do collect data from them as part of their funding agreements. And lastly, a new measure has been implemented in our overall satisfaction survey citywide, as we now have a question capturing satisfaction with facilities, venues and spaces that provide arts and cultural experiences, as this is something we know we need to work on to ensure access to all in the neighbourhoods. And this baseline will be established this year, 2025. So in summary, the Creative Gold Arts and Culture Action Plan 2025 to 27 will continue the city's commitment to the development of arts and culture on the Gold Coast. The research, data collection and sector engagement and strategy setting is important for the city to maintain in order to ensure the growth of the creative industries. The plan will act as a bridge between the Culture Strategy 2023 and the next transformative vision for arts and culture in the lead up to the Cultural Olympiad and 2032 Games, where local stories and content of people and place will be showcased on a world stage. If supported, the plan will be designed by internal city officers and distributed to sector consultation participants and published on the city's web pages. And we've just added a little bit of a quote here from an inspirational artist, David Bowie, relating to how he, more than anything, wanted to contribute to the culture he was living in. Thank you again for your time, councillors, and for your consideration of this report.
Questions? Thanks, Fleur. I've got Councillor Marshall, then Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just on point 6, I guess the coordination and communication, we've had some really great, I guess, smaller events at the Broadbeach Cultural Centre, but one of the feedback items I get is, how do we know these things are going on? And unless as a local councillor I share it, they tend not to. So I guess similar to the NaturallyGC, as a part of that, I guess, point, is there scope that while we're talking about a Facebook page for this element of council? Because it tends to be that we hear about bleach, we hear about the big things, but we don't tend to hear about the smaller ones.
Through the chair, we do have a Creative Gold newsletter, which we're trying to sort of align our branding over these next couple of years and really grow that awareness within the sector, but also the broader community. We also link in with the city's marketing team to provide that broader citywide marketing when there are specific events on. And really, as you mentioned, trying to activate our district art spaces to ensure that the community can come out and be involved. And yeah, we'd certainly be hoping to broaden that awareness and engagement with councillors and local communities as we move through this process.
Can you give me an example of something that people, like what sort of events?
Yeah, I think it was, I'm not sure it was called Firefly. It was Fireflies. It was the one at the Broad. It was about the Indigenous camps, and they came back and presented. It was amazing. And I shared photos that evening of it, but people just had no concept that it was kind of going on. And similar to the NaturallyGC comments, we tend to be marketing to our same people, the artistic people, when there's people, I guess, in the community who aren't a part of the newsletter or aren't a part of that world that would like to understand more about it. So it was more trying to have a greater reach, I guess, to non-artistic people to see the arts.
Is the Creative Gold newsletter or the Arts and Culture newsletter sent out to councillors? Are we on the mailing list? That's terrible to ask. But
Through the chair, I think that's something that you have to subscribe to, but I'd certainly be happy to send it through so that everyone can be aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are these sort of events typically included on that newsletter? In advance of them being held?
Yes, so those events are all they're promoted through that newsletter, and we actually promote HOTA's events and the sector's events and all of our city-funded organisations' events on that particular newsletter. We also have Instagram social media pages for the Arts and Culture unit and the cross-promotion of what our creatives are doing across the city. So part of this work really is starting to interrogate how we increase that awareness for the benefit of our community arts creative organisations. So that's certainly something that we will be looking at and making sure this awareness is across the entire city.
Just separate to the recommendation, do you reckon you could just do a summary, like a briefing note that says here's how to subscribe and here's the social media handles? Is it the City of Gold Coast handle or have you got your own?
We do have a separate Arts and Culture unit, Creative Gold, Instagram page, Facebook page, and newsletter monthly.
Right.
Yeah, so I can send through those links to all the councillors.
Now you know. There you go. Creative Gold. Yeah, that'd be awesome if it came in a little note to councillors. It'd be awesome, just to try to make sure we got the handles right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Great idea. On Councillor Martin on that point, and then to Councillor Fowler.
I was just going to say, I was aware of that Arts and Culture Facebook page, but it probably is more industry focused, right? Like the articles that are on there. Yeah. It's not so much, and I was interested if there is it's not so much consumer advertising around events and like we have our major events calendar that the city and EGC do, but I don't think we have that more underground arts at what's on. So I just wondered, is there a marketing or a consumer marketing strategy linked to those channels? Might be part of that briefing.
It's funny you mention this. This week I've had this conversation with a few outlets in relation to the music sector and the missing street press. So for the last 10 years, we had a street press. Blank Gold Coast was a street press, and it kind of told everyone about what was happening from an arts and culture point of view, and it's now no longer being printed. It hasn't been determined viable, but there's clearly a gap in the market with letting people know about these sort of things, and that was actually filling a really important role for us. So there is hope that might come back, but I don't know if that's a question. But
it'd be great if there was a comment from the arts and culture team, and I know the precinct entities used to do a bit of that gap as well. So just, is there a consumer-facing communications around all the great arts and culture events and experiences?
Through the chair, that is absolutely something that we feel will be required to discuss once we start activating that stakeholder engagement across all of the different entities, so we can understand how we can best cross-promote and really capitalise on all of the different bodies of work that we're all doing separately. That's certainly something that is a focus of this particular plan, particularly in the second
year. It's point number 6, isn't it? You put it in the action plan, so it's definitely front of mind. Councillor Farrell, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, just a comment on that. I think there's been a lot of work done by the city to centralise events with what's on Gold Coast, and it's live. I think that if we're seeing gaps in that in terms of arts and culture, and perhaps we're not, perhaps we are, maybe there is an arts and culture field that can be added as an overlay to what's on Gold Coast.
Question? Yeah, that sounds like
through the chair. While this discussion kicked off, I actually did the same thing. I actually went on What's on Gold Coast. So What's on Gold Coast has a standalone tab for arts and culture.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
and so it lists all of those. And I did have a look, and we may be missing content, but there does appear to be quite a lot of grassroots content on there, cultural workshops, that type of thing. So it does seem to be picking up some of that smaller. Smaller events, but there may still be.
Well, Active and Healthy's on there, NaturallyGC's on there. So if Creative Gold and some of those more arts and culture events aren't on there, then perhaps that's just an action to consider. That wasn't my question, but Chair, so if I can ask my actual question. I just had a question just around in the plan. So on page 12 of the plan, which is 63 of the report. So when we're talking about spaces for creating and presenting, so I know that we make note that we would be looking at 4 city assets to potentially look at. My financial risk question is just around the city potentially becoming a head leasee of future spaces. So does this mean that the city would lease a property from a private owner and then sublease smaller portions to arts and culture groups at affordable rates? I get the rationale. Some artists might not be able to afford a larger commercial space. But if we become the head leasee, how will we, rent risk if our sub-leasees default? And what would be like the caps or safeguards in place to protect ratepayers from ongoing liabilities if we did go down that strategy?
Through the chair, that is something that we did hear from the sector, and it has been a challenge over many years for arts and cultural groups to be able to afford the spaces that they require to enable that arts and cultural activity within our neighbourhoods. We are very much looking at different models through this work, and this work is really just an investigation as to how that might happen. And of course, we would explore all of the safeguards and absolutely be putting ratepayers' money front of mind and risks, and assessing how that might really facilitate what the sector is wanting from us. So yes, that was something we did hear loud and clear, and we do have particular models where we're using precincts, and we're actually working together with libraries, and as part of our different shifts within the organisation structure is really starting to make us look at how we can use existing facilities to enable that activity in a better way. And also how we might be able to use spaces that we can facilitate something like the Broadbeach District Arts Hubs in cultural precincts around the city. But also, if there are any opportunities where creatives or creative businesses might be saying, look, we have these facilities, or, you know, even secondary activations in some of the major developments that are coming up through the city, whether there are spaces that we might be able to manage subleases or occupation or some kind of management agreements for that arts and cultural activity and making places and creative enterprise to carry on within those. So this is really just seeking council's endorsement to start investigating how we might be able to facilitate what the sector has asked us for in that regard.
Just a follow-on, Chair, quickly. So is it the plan of city officers to prioritise city-owned assets and the underutilisation of those spaces first before we, I guess, embark on a journey where the city becomes like a head leasee arrangement, or is this part of the strategy that we will be looking at that as a proactive option?
Through the Chair, I think we will certainly be prioritising spaces that we know can be activated for minimal cost for these purposes. However,
or no cost if it's council.
Or no cost,
yeah.
That's right. However, there have been certain, there are certain buildings or spaces that lend themselves better to, sort of larger scale public art making and innovative arts and experimental arts. So that's really the key there for us listening to the sector to say, look, if opportunities do arise, we will explore them.
I think my recollection is in the last 10 years we've actually done that with, was it Leveller? I feel like I actually even remember going to Helensvale and us taking on a short-term lease on a place for one of the young artists development programs, and we had exhibitions in right next to the Helensvale library. That was a long time ago.
Before my time.
We did in Coolangatta, yeah. So it's the activation of vacant spaces.
There was a Level Up exhibition space and making space in the Coolangatta, the Strand shopping precinct,
which was a commercial,
as well.
effectively a commercial lease, but it ultimately, So there's definitely examples where we've done it. It sounds like they're prioritising city ones. Did you feel like you got your question answered after I interrupted? Yeah, cool. Any other questions? Councillor Munn.
Just a question in the strategy under the spaces, number 4, and it talks about a city network of long-term creative hubs by utilising at least 4 city assets. And I just wondered about those 4 locations. Do you have a sort of geographical spread at this point across the whole of city? Are those locations still to be determined? I'd love to see how that is spread across the city.
Through the Chair, we do have existing creative spaces program, which enables creatives to come and use the sheds at Ormeau, at the Ormeau Community Centre. There's 2 making spaces there. We're currently activating one in Upper Coomera Community Centre. We have one in Coolangatta at the community hall, the community space in Coolangatta. And we also did have the 4217 space, which was is now being redeveloped for the Music Town Hall. So that particular program isn't running this year with the Level Up Youth Visual Arts Residency, but we have also it's taken the Broadbeach District Arts Hub, and we're activating the art pods there, and we have management and oversight over the creative spaces within that purpose-built facility for the use of the city's creative sector. So we currently do have 4 particular precincts across the city, and we are just now working with our different business units within our branch to see how we might be able to also utilise other spaces across the city without real cost impacts.
Great. Any other questions? No? Awesome. Well, I'm happy to move the item. Would anyone like to second it? Councillor Martin. I commend the recommendation to the committee today. I actually think it's really quite appropriate that we've gone through this wonderful 10 years and seen our city turn from a place around Australia that probably wasn't regarded as a cultural hub, but to become a real cultural hub. And obviously that's, kind of driven by the anchor that is about $150 million or thereabouts in the hotter cultural precinct over the last decade. But it's more than that, and that things like the Bleach Festival and the other programs we're running are making the city well known as a place where culture is celebrated and artists are celebrated and supported. So super exciting 10 years over the last decade, and it makes sense for us to have this kind of interim action plan before the Cultural Olympiad comes in. The Olympics is going to clearly have a big cultural component to it, and it makes no sense for us to have a 10-year plan without having regard for that. So this kind of stopgap 3-year kind of plan in the interim, I think, makes practical sense. So I commend it to councillors. And did anyone want to speak against it? Or do anyone want to speak for it?
Yeah, I'd like to speak for it. Look, this has been a very lengthy and comprehensive process that you've gone through. And I'm just really pleased to see those percentages, those figures that you spoke about, with 75% plus, everything basically apart from delivering art to all age groups, which was about 59%, but everything was 75% and above. And it just shows you that what we have been doing over this last 10 years has been incredibly effective. And as Councillor Tozer said, from being regarded as a cultural backwater a few years ago, there's no way in the world anyone could ever accuse us of that now. I think the most significant thing is here, people often look at the cost of what it's costing to put on, a show, an art exhibition or whatever it is. And so many people fail to understand that it's part of our social fabric, and generally you can't just gauge the success of art on what it returns, the money that comes in through the door, and those percentages and those surveys of showing what it means to the community, how important it is for our social fabric. I'm so glad that was pointed out, because it's such a critical factor. It's very much a part of who we are as a community, and for well-being, for tolerance, for integration, all those things. It just works on so many levels. So I think it was a great report, and I think it just pointed out the importance of art and culture in our city, what we've done to accelerate that, and how we need to keep going. Particularly, as I say, the only concerning one there was whether we're delivering enough for all demographics. But again, Hotter have been doing so much in that youth space over the last few years. To actually, there's a did you say that just a question actually through you, Mr. Chair? Did you say that 59% was the same as the last survey?
Through the chair, yes, that's the same as the results in 2023.
In 2023, there we go. So it's only a couple of years. Yeah, I would hazard a guess that it was substantially lower than that back in 2013. But
no doubt.
Yeah, as I say, because Hotter have been doing, and not just Hotter, but right across the board. But I know that they've been doing so much with programs to target younger people and attract a different demographic. So we're getting it used to be a place, the old art centre or whatever, where the demographic that attended was really 75 in the shade and 75 plus in the shade. And that's really
most of us wouldn't remember that.
and it's changed dramatically. So yeah, great report, and keep on keeping on. Thank you.
That's great. All right, if there's no other further remarks, I'll take the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Fleur, Melinda, thank you so much. I think, Melinda, you're sticking around, aren't you? Awesome. Good stuff. We're moving on to the Library Services Annual Update. Talk about how awesome our libraries are. And are you... No. G'day. See, there's a little light that is on the thing. So just see press the button. And then you'll see the light go on the thing. So yeah, if the light's off, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Okay, good morning. Good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Paul Banks and I'm the Acting Manager of Library Operations, and I'm here to present the 2024-25 Library Service Annual Update. The past year has been an exciting period for our libraries, filled with highlights and with challenges. But the biggest highlight for myself and my team has been the privilege of delivering a modern, world-class library service to the Gold Coast community. As you can see on this slide, our customers can take the libraries with them anywhere, anytime. Like this person who's enjoying a free e-audiobook while on holidays, or perhaps he is streaming a free movie or music. All are possible via our collection. Whatever he is doing, he is challenging the traditional stereotype of the library being rows of books held within four walls. Here at Gold Coast Libraries, we're so much more than that, and we are challenging that stereotype each and every day. Gold Coast Libraries is the best library service in Australia.
It's a big claim.
Other library services continue to visit us to learn about our services and our innovations, but what really sets us apart is our people, our services, our collections, and our strategies for the future. Our statistics, which you see on the slide, confirm just how much the community values the services that our libraries offer. Visitation to our libraries last year was almost 2 million. Despite some temporary library closures for refurbishments and maintenance work, as well as, of course, the impacts of Tropical Cyclone Alfred. And we continue to see significant growth in our loans. We were also excited to launch a new library app last year, and we have already seen a large number of downloads for this app. We have almost 371,000 library members enjoying our services. Our libraries continue to attract new members each and every day, from both new residents to the Gold Coast and existing residents discovering just what we have to offer. We had over 32,000 people join our libraries in 2024-25, which is an increase of 18% on the previous year. You can see here on the slide the range of services available to our members. The free Wi-Fi and spaces for customers to work, study and relax continue to be popular. And we still offer public access PCs and printing services for those customers who don't have their own device. And of course, our staff are always on hand to offer support with customers using the computers, which helps to build the digital literacy skills of our community. We have almost 600,000 physical items in our collection, and we continue to move our libraries to a bookstore model to display many of our library collections. This involves shelving the items by genre, rather than the traditional approach of shelving fiction in alphabetical order and non-fiction by the Dewey Decimal System. We find that this approach is far more user-friendly for our customers and helps them to browse and borrow and discover items more easily. We have already completed this refresh at Burleigh Heads, Elanora and Southport libraries, with Helensvale and Runaway Bay to be completed next. Our collection is funded through both the city's budget and a grant from the State Library of Queensland. The State Library has already flagged some potential changes to their funding model, and there is always a risk that any reduction in budget will affect the size and quality of our collection for ratepayers. We also offer almost 500,000 digital items. Gold Coast Libraries leads the way with our digital collection, with our online library the envy of many other local government areas around Australia. Customers can enjoy free e-books, e-audiobooks, newspapers, magazines, streamed movies and music, all accessed from a variety of platforms, as well as free online learning tutorials through LinkedIn Learning, which is a great resource for our customers. And just like the print collection, it is important that these digital offerings are freely available to ensure equitable access to our community. We continue to increase the percentage of our collection budget spent on digital items to reflect changing customer patterns in reading, watching and listening to content. The challenge is to ensure we continue to have sufficient items on hand to meet customer demand. 6,325 library programs were offered to Gold Coast residents in the last year. with almost 152,000 attendees, which was up 5% on the previous year. All library services and programs are focused on supporting the reading, literacy and learning needs of our community. And every service and program ties back to our physical and digital library collections. This ensures that everyone can borrow, download or stream the information presented in the programs how and when they want. Our family engagement programs for young children and their parents support the early literacy development of 0 to 5-year-olds, which is the foundation for lifelong learning. The programs include baby rhyme time, toddler time and story time sessions. And we also offer the stay and learn time after these sessions for kids and parents to enjoy the resources and enjoy the space, and for the parents and staff to interact and build on the early literacy skills discussed during the session. We had over 100,000 attendees at these family engagement sessions in this past year, and these remain our most popular and well-attended programs. They are so important to establish a reading and learning culture in our youngest residents and to build early literacy skills from a young age. In 2024-25, we updated our operating hours, and we also changed them again just recently as part of meeting the adopted 25-26 budget. We reviewed the visitation patterns across our libraries and made reductions in hours at some libraries where customer demand was not high. But while we reduced weekend hours at some of our smaller and quieter libraries, the net outcome was that we were actually able to increase the hours across the week at 7 of our 12 library sites. This included changing our late afternoon and evening opening hours to better reflect customer visitation patterns and reflect what customers were telling us about when they wanted to access our services. So we're now open until a mixture of 5:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. across different weekdays across the service at most of our libraries. One of the most exciting changes in the past year has been the co-location of city services within several of our libraries. Customer service staff are now assisting customers inside the libraries at Broadbeach, Elanora and Nerang. This reflects a one city approach to service delivery by creating easy access for customers to visit the one space to borrow a book, use the Wi-Fi, pay their rates or make a general council inquiry. We are looking at future opportunities to fully integrate our services and to deliver even more efficiencies for ratepayers. We already share the precinct space with councillors at Upper Coomera, Helensvale, Coolangatta and Robina, and we are pleased to now also have the local councillors within the library buildings at both Nerang and very soon at Broadbeach. The co-location and integration of services all under one roof is a preview of future operating models proposed for the Ormeau and Coomera community hubs. We also saw a big increase in our outreach activities in 24-25, and this is where we take the library and its services out to the community. The pop-up library is available to attend local divisional events and city events, and this service promotes all that Gold Coast libraries have to offer. The home library service operates on a monthly cycle and currently supports over 130 residents by delivering books directly to their homes. And our little libraries are stocked with Book Set Free, which are pre-loved library books that would otherwise have been recycled. These are built as part of a wonderful partnership with Men's Shed and are scattered throughout the city. We have had huge interest in installing more little libraries from both councillors and residents, and as a result we have more than doubled the total number of these that are installed in the past 12 months. The mobile library visits the suburbs where a library is not close by, especially in the north of the city and in the hinterland. This valuable service ensures that no resident is disadvantaged in accessing library services. And finally, we have 6 library kiosks. These library vending machines are situated in sporting or community centres where people are milling about and might want to browse and borrow a book on the spot or take home a new release. The Southport Library houses the city's local studies and corporate library right upstairs from the ground floor of the library. Our local studies collection brings the history of the Gold Coast to life through an extensive print and digital collection, including images, maps and other publications, while the corporate library supports councillors and city staff with research assistance and access to trusted databases and sources to support their work. If you haven't done so already, I'd encourage you to check out the amazing collection of historic images on offer like the one you see on screen. And if you visit the space upstairs at Southport, you can check out the impressive mural on the Gold Coast skyline from 2005, recently added to the wall for everyone to enjoy. This past year saw the delivery of a number of important projects and outcomes. I've already mentioned the co-location of services, the refurbishment and gentrification of several libraries, and the increase in our outreach services. Another important milestone was the implementation of a new integrated library system, which includes a fresh library catalogue for customers and a new library app for them to enjoy. It also includes a staff mobile application, meaning our staff can now offer their services on an iPad with the customers on the floor of the library rather than from behind a desk. And we're also excited to roll out the new Tap and Go printing solution, which significantly simplified the printing process for our customers. I mentioned earlier that the Gold Coast is the best library service in Australia, and each year we complete a statistical return to State Library of Queensland, and we continue to lead the way in a number of metrics against comparable libraries in southeast Queensland. Our library collection continues to be one of the most well-used and demonstrates value for money for ratepayers. In the coming year, we will continue to refurbish our library spaces to ensure they are modern and flexible and continue to make our physical collections fresh and accessible for our customers. We will continue to invest in our digital library to reflect the evolving way that customers look for information and content for work, study or leisure. And we will continue to achieve efficiencies in the delivery of our services, ensuring that our operating model focuses on value for money for ratepayers, while still delivering the best library service in Australia. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
So good. You want to borrow a book? Just joking. All good. What do you got, Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, and through you. Look, I love the presentation, and the libraries in my area and Councillor Martin's area are really popular. There's a common, I guess, belief or statement going around, but that the reduction in the hours at the Burleigh Waters Library is the start of it being closed down. Now, it's not my intention, and certainly from my speaking to people, that's not the case, but I probably need to ask it so it's on record. Is that going to happen?
Through the Chair, there is no current plan to close Burleigh Waters Library, no.
And then I guess just also touching on the changed hours, and I know that you spoke about it a few slides back, that it actually, I guess, reducing the hours or the after hours that happened, particularly at Burleigh Waters, pardon me, had an increase in efficiency. Just touch on that point.
Through the Chair, it was more so that we were able to, because we re-looked at the hours and which library sites were being well used and less well used at different times. The Burleigh Waters and Burleigh Heads libraries did not attract a particularly high number of visitors on Saturdays, and we were able to better smooth out the hours and reflect an evening hours at many of our other locations. So we're now open till 5:30 and 6 p.m. at locations like Broadbeach, which were previously only open till 5 and 7 on Thursday nights, but now 5:30 and 6 o'clock right across the week.
Happy with that? So good. Any other questions about libraries? Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question. I just have a comment, if that's okay. And I'd just like to do a massive shout out to the libraries team for Helensvale Library and Cultural Centre closure. It has been so well received by the community. I had grave concerns, and I think the libraries team and their professionalism has been state of the art. We closed down. We haven't had a blip. We had a pop-up already operating at Westfield Helensvale. We've got hundreds of the community going in there every day from day one, and a very happy community. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Melinda and her entire team who worked on that project.
Great feedback. Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. And again, it's more of a comment rather than a question, but congratulations, team. Like, it's phenomenal. And to even have the slide that said the best library service in Australia, I absolutely 100% believe it. It is phenomenal. And I would just like to give a shout out for my two little libraries, one in Normriggs Park and one over at Abbott Park in Parkwood. They are very loved, and the community wants to potentially see more of them. So you may get a few more requests.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone like libraries enough to move the presentation be noted. Thank you, Councillor Castro, and then seconded Councillor Marshall. Councillor Castro, get to open debate about how great libraries are.
Libraries are great and we should have more of them.
Be referred to special budget for that one, but anyone want to speak against libraries? Anyone hate reading? Anyone want to say mean things about books? Great. All right. Get comfortable with that as you close.
No, in all seriousness, I think everything's been said. Library team, library services do a fabulous job. And again, libraries used to just be to go and read books, and they're just so much more than just going to read books now. And so, we certainly set the benchmark. There's no doubt about it. Very, very proud of what you do and what we have in our wonderful city.
Great. Thank you. Awesome. I'll take the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Awesome. Paul, lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
We have one final item that is in closed session, and it is the Lifeguard Services Flat Water Risk Assessment, and I think it's in closed because it talks about potentially some changes to budget, or at least addresses those. And so we need to move to close because it has to have some financial implications. So can I get a mover to closed? Councillor Martin, seconded Councillor Wilkinson. Just to clarify, we're moving to close because the report relates to a potential implication on our budget, and that needs to be discussed in closed session as we do with all the special budget committees. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Let's turn the streaming. Councillor Wilkinson, we obviously had a chat in closed about a number of matters that relate to risks and the budget and prioritisation of certain beaches, which is probably most appropriate for closed session. But you, your work or your GBI, like I said, catalysed this. Would you happy to move the recommendation? Yeah. And Councillor Curtis is happy to second it. Councillor Wilkinson, tell us about it.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to start by thanking the officers for bringing back this report. I appreciate that this was off the back of a GBI I raised a little bit earlier this year, which was all about exploring the viability of expanding the city lifeguards to patrolled areas, more or less, to enclosed swimming areas. Given that this has been in closed session today, I won't go too deep into it, but I will say that there's been a significant report that the city has applied, and they've applied a thorough risk assessment to these bodies of water and given a really good and strong comparativeness to other bodies of water like our oceans and our beaches. So it was great to also get some details in relation to what has happened over the last 18 months to improve public information regarding flat water risks, as well as to hear some of the safety campaigns that have also been enacted during that time. So I'm pleased to see that from the recommendation that will hopefully be supported today, that this hasn't stopped here. There is a continuation with the city officers looking to monitor the utilisation of these particular flat water locations and assess their risk and obviously prioritise lifeguard services accordingly to that surveillance, and as well as a continuation of that safety education around these bodies of water. And ultimately, any other further decisions would be a deliberation at special budget committee, but I certainly welcome the report, and I look forward to seeing those monitoring and other considerations looked at later times, and appreciate the thoroughness of the report presented today.
Did anyone want to speak against the motion? Does anyone else want to speak for it? No? All those in favour? That motion is carried. That brings us to the end of the agenda. Hey, Jim, thank you very much for that, and team. Is there any other general business items that anyone wanted to raise or anything like that? No? I'll close the meeting at 11:23. Thanks.